Good morning, good afternoon. How's everyone doing today? Welcome to Daily Cyber, episode number 272. It's been quite a while since we've been doing all these episodes, so I'm really excited about today's episode and all the guests that we've been having. It's really great to learn about cybersecurity and the expertise and what's really going on in the industry. Having great experts here to help you guys really work through your cybersecurity journey, depending if you're starting your career or if you're a seasoned veteran. I mean, we want to have these conversations to make sure that everyone's up to speed. Which brings me to today's guest, Craig Taylor, who's a seasoned cybersecurity expert and entrepreneur with nearly 30 years of experience managing risk across different industries, from Fortune 500 corporations to SMBs. As the co-founder and CISO of CyberHoot, he has pioneered a positive reinforcement approach to cybersecurity education, helping business eliminate risk behavior and build a culture of security awareness. Craig's journey began with a Bachelor's of Arts in Psychology from the University of Guelph, and blending understanding human behavior with the technology rigor of cybersecurity. Over his career, he has led enterprise security programs at companies like Chase Payment Tech, Vista Print, DXC Technologies, and I'm sure many others that we'll talk about, where he's developed cutting-edge risk management frameworks, compliance programs, and cybersecurity roadmaps. His expertise spans incident response, which we're going to have a conversation about that today, governance and security program development, making him a sought-after leader in the cybersecurity space. So this is going to be a really in-depth session today. Please ask all your questions. If you don't have them, if you're not watching us live, comment on our LinkedIn or send me an email. We'd love to hear back from you and really get at the root of what you guys are looking for in cybersecurity. So let's hack at it. How's it going, Craig?
It's good, Brandon. How you doing?
Not bad. How's your week been so far?
I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say this, but better than yours, I think.
You say that. That's like the thing. I had a colleague that worked in a hospital. He worked security. And it was a full moon, and everyone's like, "Oh, it's going to be an easy night." And everyone's like, "No, you don't say that. You never say it's going to be easy night, right?"
That's right.
So the rest of your week is just going to be full. I just have this one question. We have an incident, and you're like 72 hours sprint.
Right. That's exactly how it happens. Usually Thursday, Friday. So we got another day free.
Friday. It's generally Friday at 8 p.m.
Yeah, exactly.
I have a question. I have this weird activity going on in our environment. What do you think it is? And it's like, spin up the 13.
Too many of those.
Spin up the 13. Have the conversation.
Yep.
So, talking a little bit about what you're going through and kind of your business, something you talked about was the psychology, right? The psychology about cybersecurity and really kind of going through human behavior. I'd love to dive a little bit deeper into that when you're talking about like cybersecurity awareness training and human, risk management.
So when it comes to cyber awareness training, there's a big problem in the industry with disengaged employees or apathetic employees. Black Hat conference last week in Las Vegas had presenters from the University of Chicago and the University of San Diego. They studied 20,000 employees at a healthcare provider over the course of this year. And they said three things came to conclusions in this study. One, they could just about fish anyone to click at their hospital, because they could craft the message using psychology to things that they knew would be appealing to their constituents. So, dress code changes was a top getter of clicks on things. During the study, they did, weekly or monthly videos and some fake email, what I call gotcha email attacks to their employees. And they did that consistently over 8 months. They had a control group of employees who they did nothing with. It's like, you're just on your own. If you click, you click. If you don't, you don't. And they found a 1.7% difference between the control group and the group they had sent all kinds of different modalities of training, from interactive to videos to this or that. And what their conclusion was that people disengaged. They're tired of being punished from failing their phishing tests.
Right.
They just decide, in some cases, I have firsthand needs. I talked to a guy last week. He said, I am a pretty sharp fellow, but I've failed a couple of tests. So now I just forward everything to IT. I give up. I'm not going to do anything more because I don't like being punished. Really sharp fellow. Disengagement is the number one problem we're facing, right? Alongside, clicking on those links when you shouldn't. So that study was really interesting because it really boiled down to the psychology. My background, as you mentioned, was psychology 30 years ago. There's a quote from 75 years ago, B.F. Skinner. I have it in my deck here. I wanted to share with you today. The quote says, when you reinforce behavior, you increase the likelihood it will occur again, right? That's a principle that's been lost in cybersecurity training because what we focus on too much is punishing the bad behaviors. Let's stop the clicks. Let's fire people who click on things so they pay attention. And that's just an external punishment basis that creates disengagement. People stop watching videos. They said on average in their study, these university researchers said 10 seconds is the length of time people watch the videos they send out in response to a failure of phishing, right? Where someone clicked on a link they shouldn't. So if punishment just creates disengagement, what creates the engagement? And you heard it from B.F. Skinner 75 years ago in 1953, said, if you reinforce the behaviors you seek, there's a higher degree or increase that those behaviors will occur again in the future. So what does that mean? For all of us listening here, we need to focus on reinforcing the good behaviors we want to see more of, rewarding employees for engagement, and then rewarding them for demonstrating things, perhaps in your simulated phishing exercises where they do identify a fake email phishing test, they report it. Reward that, right? That's the most traditional way companies are rewarding it. Instead, what you can do is you can pass them through a test. Like we do this at our company. We have an interactive simulator, and the user has to look at the sender, then the subject, then the greeting, then the spelling, the urgency, emotionality, links, and attachments. Those are the 7 things, pieces of a puzzle. If you know what to look for in those 7 places, there's no reason you should ever fail a phishing test because you absolutely know without a shadow of a doubt what you're looking at. And so we reward those users every time they make a correct decision. They pass the test, they get a certificate, they get continuing education credits. Their little avatar owl grows in ferocity, right? Like over time through a gamification. All of those things are designed to do 3 things. Engage the employee because it's fun, entertaining. It's not punishment, right? When you punish things, let me switch gears for a moment. Take an analogy. This is my favorite one. If you train a dog at a dog park, you have a choice. Train it with a shock collar, train it with treats. Which do you think the dog likes better?
Treats, of course.
Which does the owner like better? Like as an owner of a dog myself, I don't want to shock my dog ever. I want to do the good behaviors. So I reward the good behaviors. And so when I say come, and every once in a while I give it a treat, every time I say come, the dog comes like, maybe I'm going to get a treat. Maybe I'm going to get a treat. That's how we reinforce good behaviors, by benefiting and positively reinforcing the good behaviors. So it works there. It works in parenting. It works in employees. If you reward the good behaviors of inspecting an email and doing just the right things, reporting it when they need to, that's going to change behaviors. What doesn't change behaviors and what actually has a negative repercussion is punishing the failures.
So I think there's a balance. I'm going to play devil's advocate. I think there's a balance. I'm agreeing with employees that will follow through, and gamification does work 100%, right? That is a modality or a method, a process that totally agree that benefits a lot of those employees that are engaged, that are working. But you and I know, just like dogs, just like children, there's a different size. And I have like nephews, and it's interesting. There's nephews that I have, you couldn't raise their voice because it would just break them.
Yeah.
And there's ones that I know, like if you do not like raise your voice, get them attention, they're not listening. They're not listening. Whatever. I don't care what you're thinking, what you're saying. But the other ones, and I think there's a balance with human nature, that there's some people that are engaged in doing the gamification and succeeding, and there's some people that there's the accountability model. And I think we have to balance it out too, that, okay, the gamification, we're trying it, you're not working, you're not paying attention. there's almost negligence. It's almost on that point where you're doing it maliciously. Like, we're concerned there. Now you're clicking and I'll use the example for myself. In instant response, where you have accounts payable person, you're having ACH compromises or phishing campaigns on them, and they're doing the gamification, it's not working. There's an accountability matrix on that, because what happens is if they transfer $40,000, $100,000 out of the organization, that's a huge incident, right? And
absolutely.
Saying, sorry, you didn't make it this time. Pat on your head. Maybe next time you'll get it.
No, but that doesn't work.
Right?
You're absolutely right.
I think there's a balance. And I'm not saying there's one side or the other. And gamification, I think, should be the first stage of getting people engaged. And then there should be metrics that you're measuring on who's succeeding and who's not. And then adjust that to maybe you're concerned, employees that are not doing well in the gamification and have positions of privilege, meaning they have access to certain environments. They have access to certain critical data or sensitive data.
Yep. You're not wrong. I completely agree with that. The gamification helps change the average person from a apathetic person or a disengaged, or I've been punished too many times, I don't care anymore, to hopefully spur just enough interest to get into the program, to get into the simulated phishing exercise. And then they realize, oh, I actually can learn this. I don't have to, throw my hands up in frustration, because it's not rocket science. What we're teaching here is very simple, common sense with a little bit of information around typo squatted domain names. Like the 1-letter difference in that Netflix email matters, whether there's an I missing or what have you. Here's the other thing, though. When you design your metrics, you brought up metrics. How do you know who's in and out? One of the key shortcomings, I think, there are two or many, there's actually 5 or 6 shortcomings of this fake email gotcha fish testing that gets done, is exactly your point around metrics. You can send out a fake email phishing test to all your users. They probably did it at the university study of this healthcare provider, 20,000 participants. Unless the end user opens that email, you have zero metric on that person. You don't know what they did. There's nothing. With the simulated exercise that we send out, it requires every person to do the exercise to pass it. Otherwise, we keep reminding you, and then we escalate to your leadership, and we put it into a final report that every month that you can see, oh, you know what? These 3 people who have administrative access, these 2 people who can send wire transfers haven't completed their educational assignment. I have to go intervene manually. So you know exactly what every single person has done to get that metric to 100%. That's a beautiful thing.
Right.
And it's really important, because if you have someone that maybe transferred into your company and was, God forbid, fired at another company for failing their phishing tests, they may be totally disengaged and just be ready to give up. So you need to be able to identify that and intervene and say, listen, this is a requirement. Everybody has to do it. But the good news is you can't fail. You get to retry it. You get to keep working your way through this, build your rubric, have an understanding. And once you build in the gamification, the avatars that grow, the certificates, and all of the different little rewards, there's another study from another person in psychology that says early rewards increase intrinsic motivation. Immediate rewards can actually increase intrinsic motivation compared with delayed or no rewards. What does that mean in plain English? You got to reward your users for doing the right thing. If you don't, and if you do it early and you do it at the beginning, you can remove the rewards later. They're going to keep doing those behaviors. It's a beautiful thing. Like when I was dog training my dog, I would give him a reward every time he came for the command come. He would come, he'd sit, reward every single time. That's called a fixed reward schedule. And it builds a behavior. And then over time, once he started to get it, I would do it every second time. And then every third time, every 5th time. And then it would totally randomize it. Like, I won't do it today, I'll do it tomorrow. And that builds an intrinsic motivation in that dog to immediately come when you call, no matter the situation, because it might be the time they get a reward. The best human example of this is a slot machine. Put a quarter in, pull. Put a quarter in, pull. You never know when you're going to get rewarded, but that's the most powerful behavior modification mechanism we've ever discovered is the slot machine for changing human behaviors towards an action. And so we need to apply these things, rewards, benefits, positive reinforcement, attaboys, to get these programs off the ground, build the cultures, and then they self-sustain. You don't have to keep that reward going, right?
Now, there's a little caveat here too. That I mean, because you're in psychology, I'm going to jump into this side too.
Sure. Yeah, please. I love it.
You're talking about people in parasympathetic states. So what happens when they're in a relaxed state, they're focused, all that, they can now go. But now talk about someone in a sympathetic state. They're stressed, they're overwhelmed, they just came from a meeting,
Yes.
they're tired, they're fatigued. That's when the challenge is they're going into the fight, flight, or freeze mode.
They make mistakes. Yep.
Right.
You're right.
So I think that's the other thing is we have to look at in society, the people that generally get phished are not in a parasympathetic state, that they're relaxed logic. They're under some sort of stress. They did something quickly. They clicked on a link that they shouldn't have. They know they shouldn't. Like when you debrief them after, they're like, I know I shouldn't have.
I've done the same. Like we're both in incident response. So Brandon and Craig, the two of us, we do incident response. And to a person, I've asked days later, where was the first mistake here? I reacted to it, Craig. I clicked on something. I know I almost instantly knew I shouldn't. So what do we do about that parasympathetic state where people are under stress and they're clicking on things? Well, that's where you get muscle memory from repetition, right?
But that may not help. And and you know it as well as I do, and you being in psychology, if they're in a fight, and this was kind of the funny thing when I grew up, I did holistic lifestyle coaching. They said, you can't do a mathematical equation while you're being attacked by a tiger, right?
Right. No, that's right. Which is why, when you do martial arts, you repeat those motions over and over again. When someone throws a punch, you almost instinctively block that punch out of the way, right? Because you've practiced, there's muscle memory, there's an instinctual thing.
But you're in a parasympathetic state. Someone has done 17 years of martial arts. You're in a parasympathetic because you've done that training for so long. Your sympathetic doesn't graze so hard because you've been punched so many times. The instructor, the sparring, all that. So someone throws a punch, it's just another Monday, right? Like, right? And your body reacts and responds. But you and I know the accounting person, right? The financial person, the help desk person, whatever, all are not in that fight or flight or not in that training day in and day out. So when it happens, it's like what Mike Tyson said. You have a plan. You have a plan until someone punches in the face. The plan goes out the door, right? It's kind of like that.
I am confident that you are correct that under stress, some people will click and make mistakes. Mm-hmm. What we are trying to suggest, what I'm trying to suggest is that through repetition, right? When you identify a rubric for how to easily, quickly, and almost automatically identify a phishing attack by doing these simulated phishing scenarios where over time you can get it from a minute. The people that start our program at ART, we measure how long they do it. It takes them a minute and a half to do it. But over time, that drops down to 10 seconds. Right. In the perfect world, they're getting so proficient, and we increase the difficulty over time too in our simulator. Right. So people will go from easy to moderate to hard. Hard, they eliminate the wizard that drives them through the 6 or 7 questions, right? But over time, they get down to 10 seconds where it's almost automatic, where they get in. And here's the truth. You know this too, Brandon. I get at least one phishing email a day in my personal inbox or my work inbox. It's happening all the time.
What do you mean at least one or at least 20 or 30? I mean,
at least 20 or 30 perhaps, but that's where that muscle memory, where people are looking at the sender. Oh, it's type of squatted delete. Oh, it's type of squatted delete. Oh, it's from my CEO, but it's from outside the company, delete. You create these rubrics, and through that constant repetition, it becomes more and more ingrained. It's the best we can do. I mean, there is no other alternative. It's out of shutting off email, right? What is the alternative? So my point is, if you can reward the good behaviors, if you can practice them enough to build muscle memory, if you can keep people engaged in cybersecurity by creating a positive culture around it and teaching people, it's not the IT person's job to secure our business. It's yours and mine and everyone here to make sure if we see something, say something, if we get something, delete it if it's not right, or send it on as reporting it. That's the best we can do. And it's far better.
I think it's about, let me put context. I agree with what you're saying of creating that structure of training and gamification and blanking that. I also think of separation of duties, right? Making sure there different types of controls are in place. So if someone does make a mistake, at least someone can validate that. So if there isn't a wire transfer, I'll use that example. Someone else is validating that transfer.
Right. You always have to have 2 people. Multi-factor is another example.
100%. Right. So Mimecast for email filtering and all things along that, or Barracuda or some tools. I think there's things that we can work in combination holistically. I think
absolutely. Yeah. I was speaking strictly on the training side.
Yeah.
You need a tech stack that eliminates as many of those fake emails coming in as possible. You need the banner warning that says, hey, this came from outside your organization. Therefore, your president is not asking you to buy gift cards secretly for the company.
Yeah, he's not in a conference. He didn't lose his wallet.
Not in a conference. That's right. You need to have cyber insurance, because look, you don't drive a car without car insurance. You run your family's life without life insurance. There are tragedies and critical mistakes happen on occasion, and cyber insurance is there to pick you up, right, on your incident this week. If they have cyber insurance, then the damages that are occurring and the cost of forensics and the cost of recovery, most of it's going to be covered by cyber insurance if they were compliant to the questionnaire they answered, like, you train your people? Yes. Do you phish test them? Yes. Do you do simulations? Yes. Do you have a tech stack? Yes. Okay, we're going to cover you for this incident.
Right, 100%, right?
That's a holistic approach.
And a lot of times when insurance companies, and I want people to know this that are listening, a lot of times the insurance companies, they're starting to do their due diligence now and saying, what's the maturity? When's the last time you tested? How are people scoring? They want to know that it's not you just checking a box, that you're actually doing the work. And
therein lies, again, one of the challenges of these fake email phishing tests. From that study, they might have tested and sent hundreds of emails, and they got 55% of their users to click over the course of 8 months, despite the training, which was crazy. One of their conclusions: we can convince anybody to click if we have the right phishing example, like changing your dress code rules at that hospital or healthcare provider got the most clicks, because people were like, wait a minute, you can't tell me how to dress, blah, blah, blah. So they were clicking. The reality is you have to be able to address the instinct and insert that little pause between the email coming in and your reaction to it, like clicking right away. You just respond to things, folks. Take a deep breath. I listened to a book about difficult conversations, or the next conversation. He said the first word out of your mouth when you're about to have a difficult conversation or a contentious conversation should be a deep breath of air. Right. Because that creates that pause. So instead of answering immediately, like, oh my God, okay, now I'm ready to answer you. And it's beautiful in cyber. It's beautiful in conversations.
100%. Now, got some people commenting. I'm gonna do the second comment first. One of the users mentioned, I use CyberHoot at my MSP. Clients love it. So.
Who said that? Oh my gosh, you don't have to tell me, but that's awesome. Yeah, love it.
One of the users in the community, Kinder Bisky. Then another Twitch Lobster mentioned or asked, what about unsubscribe phishing? That's a hard one, even if for less novice users. How to know it's real unsubscribe? Spam equals phishing.
I have a firsthand knowledge on this question this year. We had an incident where someone was magically subscribed to a dozen, it could have been 100 mailing lists. His inbox went from, 200 messages a day to 400. And there were all these newsletters from like foreign languages and all sorts of different things. And he was like, Craig, someone's in my bank account, someone's in my email, because I was told my bank called me, and then people emailed me that I was sending out these invoices that I never sent out. So something happened. We traced it back to him unsubscribing in the blue link at the bottom of those emails of those newsletters that he did not sign up for. So lesson learned. Here's the advice. If you find yourself subscribed to newsletters that didn't say, hey, it looks like you want to subscribe to the DailyCyber newsletter, please confirm here. If you didn't confirm it, that newsletter is not following any kind of netiquette or internet best practice around confirming your subscription, because anybody could stick your email into that website and subscribe you. Mm-hmm. You need to confirm it. So what do? When they don't confirm it, even if they did confirm it and it was someone else doing it and you just got the confirmation, mark it as spam. Do not unsubscribe, because you cannot trust the link at the bottom of the email. That link could be passing you through an evil proxy website that reaches into your computer and grabs active tokens. If you happen to have a browser window open to your bank and another to your email, which you're reading your email, so you'll always have the email, The evil proxy reaches and said, thank you, here's your authentication token, post multi-factor, give it to the hacker. Now the hacker's in your bank, now the hacker's in your email account. Terrible, terrible things happen in that case. Fortunately for him, the bank called him and said, we just blocked a $10,000 transfer out of your account because they couldn't give the multi-factor authenticator token when that transaction was attempted. So no money was lost in that incident. But there are other cases where you could lose money, and certainly sending everyone that's ever sent you an email in your inbox, because they just run an automated scrape program in your inbox to grab all the email addresses out of your inbox and then begin emailing them an invoice that says, hey, you owe Craig Taylor $100 for your services rendered. Click here to pay, or click here to ask questions, or email me. And then suddenly people are giving their credentials away because there's a credential thieving token behind that one.
Yeah, 100%. And I think the one thing to add is there's tools right now where you can look at doing the dark web scan and seeing if your email is actually out there. Have you been pwned? Looking at that website and kind of looking at where your email address has actually been compromised. So you can kind of look at where you potentially get, if you have certain sites. I'm going to use LinkedIn as a big one. If LinkedIn's been compromised, you'll go through LinkedIn and have to reset your password, make sure two-factor authentication set up, like things along that line. You'd want to do that, and you want to go directly to the source. Don't go to the email. You and I are talking about this. Don't go to the email. Hey, your password's just been, we've had a compromise. Your password, we need to set, click on here. Go to the source, go to the actual, if it's a valid, I want to be clear here. If it's a valid company that you have worked with, LinkedIn, right. I'm using an example, LinkedIn.com, it's a valid company. If it's not, and you don't work with, don't go to their website, because it could be a threat actor just spun that up. Because a lot of things that we'll do is we'll go look and see where that domain was registered. If it was registered last month, we know that's a scam.
Yep, exactly right. Interestingly, you mentioned, have I been pwned? I'm sorry, I'm not supposed to, but anyways, we do an API to them to pull in. For every user we train by email address, we also look for their domain and have I been pwned, and for an email address and have I been pwned, and we pull that back in, as well as another one which is quite good called dehashed. They have actual redacted passwords, so you can actually see someone is clearly not using a password manager because, and I love this one as an example. I looked at someone the other day, they used 2002 as the last four of their password, then 2003, then 2004. I'm like, I know your rubric. So you're using the same root password and you're just adding the year that you changed it to your password. So adopt a password manager, adopt pass phrases, adopt pass keys, put all of that in unique passwords in your password manager, because there's no other way for the human mind, going back to psychology, to remember more than 5 really strong 15-character passwords, which is the best practice today. So right. Password manager can do 150, 200. I have about 500 accounts that I've accumulated over my 35-year career. They're all unique. They're all in a password manager. And they're all tied to two-factor. Or better still today, if you get the option to adopt a pass key, which is a new cryptographic hash that can't be stolen and reused on another website, it's tied to your computer and that website. So even if there's a breach and they steal your pass key, it's useless to anyone else. It doesn't work. So it's a really good thing. It's a new improvement from the FIDO Alliance, the Fast Identity Online. It's backed by Apple and Google and Microsoft and all the big players. It will become more common in the future, and it's highly recommended by us. And I don't know if you've had any experience with it.
Well, even with the passkey, just make sure you're using a valid password manager that is using a valid passkey. Because I've noticed when one's on I'll use Apple's passkey manager has been compromised, right? And I've seen that, right? And people get in their iTunes accounts and I'll start going through, and then because they get that and they get through their phone and then they mimic, and now it's a whole fiasco. So make sure you're using one that's valid. Do your research, and if you don't know, reach out to one of us and ask. Right?
Hey, Brandon, does the password manager built into your browser count?
I tell people to be careful of it, right? To be mindful.
I say don't use the ones in your browser. You've got a company that's writing 400,000, maybe 1 million or more lines of code to make Chrome or to make Edge or to make Firefox. And their focus is on the browser itself. And then somebody says, hey, well, we got a lot of passwords that are going through this thing. Let's throw that in as a secondary. I've just seen and read about so many breaches of that password manager built into the browser. it is not their sole focus in life as it is for, say, 1Password or Bitwarden or Keeper. I've personally looked at those three. They do vulnerability and pen tests of their code, of their application code, of their architecture, of this. It's all visible on their website. We blogged about it 2 or 3 years ago when another password manager had a breach. We said, well, how do you pick one? You have to look for ones that do these really critical tasks around application code review and security assessments, not just by once and once a year or one time. I'm talking 12 times a year. Each of these vendors has done a lot of third party, tell us how we can improve kind of assessments and audits of those 3 password managers. I'm not here to shill for them. I don't get paid anything for saying that. I'm just saying not all password managers are equal. Those 3 I can validate myself as a recommendation.
Nice. Now, one of the things I want to jump to, I know someone was asking about it in the chat. We're just trying to confirm. Talk to me about risk management and cyber resilience.
Oh, okay.
I know it's a big topic.
Well, so I'll tell you, there's hundreds of standards out there. You can look at a country and say, oh, in Europe, in England, there's the Cyber Essentials, or in Canada, there's a different framework. In the US, we've got the latest and greatest, highest level for defense contractors is CMMC level 3, level 2, level 1. They're all different flavors of the same thing. Right. They all are designed to let good guys in to the data they need and keep bad guys out from the data they want. And so if you're looking at the CSF framework, that's the cybersecurity framework, it's not bad. It's maybe just not as detailed oriented as the prescriptions that you'll find in CMMC. It's a great starting point for the average company. If you
let's take a step back. Risk management. I'm company A, B, and C. I'm not really in security. What do I need to look at? Like, what's risk management for me?
Well, you want to have someone who is an expert in the field of risk management or cyber program development, such as a virtual CISO. We should probably talk about that a little bit, Brandon, because I know you sell those services. We sell them at CyberHood as well. And the idea is that you're hiring someone who does this for dozens of other companies and might have a deep bench of people backing them up, so that if I don't know something, I can go ask John, Susan, Fred at my company, hey, have you ever seen this? I'm struggling with this issue. And then bring it to you for a fraction of the cost of hiring a full-time CISO. Right? If you're at a mid-enterprise, let's say you're at a company of 200 people and you're maybe revenue of $10 million. To hire a CISO for that company is going to cost you $300,000 a year, probably somewhere in that neighborhood, plus or minus, with benefits and office space and all that equipment. Or you can hire a virtual CISO for between $30,000 and say $100,000, depending on the level of expertise, the amount of time, and the things. Then that person comes in, and the first thing, at least in our experience, what we do is we do a risk assessment. We use the NIST 800-171 for the larger companies, and then a homegrown, sort of super simplified 12 to 15 question questionnaire for the smallest companies that can't spell cybersecurity, right? We know what we're going to find. They're not training their users. They're not testing them. They don't have the right technology stack to protect them. They're missing the boat on everything. They're just basically fish in a barrel. And if any hacker targets them, they're breached. It's going to happen. So we have to keep it simple, because the last thing you want to do is walk into the founder of a company of 15 people, revenue of 500,000, and say, here's 172 things you have to do. They were like, I don't know what to do first. I thought you were going to tell me this. No, you say, okay, there's basic blocking and tackling you do, just like if you're in an emergency room and God forbid there's a car accident and someone comes in, you're going to have to save their life before you check their cholesterol levels or do a colonoscopy or figure out if they're a candidate for this cancer or that cancer. Those are all long-term solutions that help them live a long and healthy life. Today, right now, we got to stop the bleeding and save the life. So you go into a company, you have to figure out where you're at. Where's that company at? Do they know anything? Do they have anything with cyber? If not, you have to do basic blocking and tackling to make sure they're not compromised today or already, right? Because many times we'll go in, we'll start an assessment and say, whoa, wait a minute. Who's this person and why are they doing these things? Well, they don't work here. What are you? Oh my gosh. Okay, so now we have an incident and we recover from that, and then we go into blocking and tackling.
Right. Now, a little different strategy in talking about risk management. I want like everyone that's listening or watching to understand this. a lot of times you'll go in, you look at business continuity, and you look at criticality of the business, right? So you're looking at the risk of potential of an impact, right? Now that could be any type of outage, weather, storm, power, or as we're talking, cyber, right? A cyber incident where it's business email commerce network intrusion, a ransomware event, or even, internal staff that's creating issues, right? And we talked about that before the stream. But you're looking at the impact of the business and the likelihood and the risk of that. For example, if I'm the receptionist and I'm only doing, intake for people coming into the building, the risk for me getting compromised is low. Versus if the CEO, the C-suite, accounts payable, the IT and min people, security people with privileged accounts, if they could compromise, or these systems that they're working on like email, CRM, ERP, the databases, customer relations, procurement, of those systems go down, now it's an impact in the business. Now it could be, outage for clients and then cost, right? And it can be cost on both sides. I want to be clear. Some people think of, we can get up in a certain amount of time, but does that cost you money to get up? Do you have to go pay for the restoration of backup? Do you have to get the technician to come in that's an outside? And is that $10,000 for the whole restoration? So that's when you look at your risk management. You take that and now you look at what's our risk management, our business continuity plan. All right. So our business continuity plan is we need to sustain these systems, these people, these processes to sustain our business in an incident, whatever that incident may be, tornado, hurricane, cyber attack, whatever that may be. The disaster recovery and that risk management is how quickly can you get back up? How quickly can you restore those systems? So like you're saying, Craig, that's what we would come in and we assess. Now, don't get me wrong. I align with Craig is as you're doing that assessment, you realize, okay, there are gaps in the environment. Could be people, process, or technology. Right. And sometimes you're doing that and you're uncovering an incident, right? You have a threat actor in your environment in the last 6 months. What do you mean? They're still actively in your environment for the last 6 months.
Right.
Hold on. Then you have to spin up an incident and kind of go that route, clean that up, but then you still go through that process. And I think I want people to understand is you got to understand the business, right?
Oh, absolutely. Are they under any legislative requirements, right? If you're in financial services, you have FINRA to comply with. You have perhaps legislation in state. New York State has a lot of heavy regulation. They actually recognize a virtual CISO, but they require a named person to be responsible for cybersecurity in that financial firm in New York State. And they require the board of directors to be aware of how this person is performing. So it's a twofold. They hold people accountable. The board can be held accountable if they don't know what the cyber resiliency and the security and the disaster recovery preparedness of that financial firm is. So knowing the industry, you know a little bit more about what they're going to be held accountable to. Any defense contractors is really everyone's preparing for CMMC certification, which is passing and is going to be a requirement. But what if you're in healthcare? Well, you got HIPAA, you got the HITECH Act, you have patient data. What's interesting about HIPAA, and this has always bothered me, is it just says protect the data from compromise, protect it from disclosure, but it doesn't prescribe anything, right? It just says, in some cases it does, but it just gotten a little better. But a lot of times it's left up to interpretation, which I don't know about you, but a lot of businesses will interpret, I don't have to spend money on this because it doesn't say I have to. So they don't. When it's still, we're advising them, hey, this is a best practice. You absolutely want to do X, Y, and Z, but I don't have to because it doesn't say I have to. PCI says prescription, CMMC prescription. It tells you what you need to do. Some of these are different, it becomes sometimes easier and harder depending on which legislative control you fall under.
Well, I think the governance, depending on the maturity of the governance practice, will show what you need to do. And then a lot of times they'll align with a framework, right? Are you ISO, are you NIST, what is that? So you kind of align to it. So you have more of a scriptive way of doing and assessing your maturity. Because again, as you and I know, there's some business that don't need to put those controls in place because it doesn't, like I have certain companies that don't do software development.
Right.
So talking about software development, it's like, do you do coding? Do you do this? It's like, no, I don't. But hold on, it's one of the framework and one of the domains or the controls. You need to have that. Like, we don't do that.
Yeah,
we don't develop
not
software.
Applicable, right? No OWASP top 10 coding practices, training, and things of that nature. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
So, and I think that's where organizations having some sort of advisor, if you don't have someone internally, having some sort of advisor can walk you through that is key, because you don't want to go down rabbit holes and start to build a program and then get stuck that you're defending things that you shouldn't have to.
Right.
And I do that a lot of times with my job. Is I'll go in and there'll be auditors asking the company, and then I'll be the one defending, saying this is their business practice, this is what they do, that's not applicable. And they're like, oh, okay. But if I let the company do that, they would be sitting there for hours trying to defend it.
Yeah, because they don't have the credentials behind them to say we don't have to do this, right?
Yeah.
You're an expert in the industry. Auditors, they respect experts when they're held to in those audit meetings. I had a company that was getting lambasted for not changing passwords every 90 days and having 9-character complex passwords. And I said to them, you don't have to do that. But the auditor's holding us accountable to that. I said, the auditor needs to read NIST guidance from 2024 that said, never force password resets unless there's been an incident. And make passwords 15 characters, non-complex and non-expiring, because that makes people create the best, most resilient password. If you force changes, they cheat with the 2002, 2003, 2004 prefix or suffix on their favorite password.
Right.
So no, I'll go toe to toe with any auditor that tries to push a 9-character complex password, because NIST said that in 2003.
Right.
They don't say it anymore. And so you got to stand up for your clients and tell them this is best practice, whether the auditor knows it or not. And then you have to gently educate the auditor and say, okay, hey, here's the latest password, complexity requirements from NIST. You might want to read this before you cite them for that, because they're doing best practice. You might not know it. I don't want to cause problems, right? Just be quiet and subtle. Don't embarrass them publicly in the room. Just get it right, because ultimately you're there to protect your client.
100%.
That's what you want to do.
Now, cyber resilience, let's talk a little bit about that, because I think we talked about risk management, really kind of dove deep in that. Now, cyber resilience, what's your take on that?
Well, I think resilience is a combination of factors. If you look at the last 25 years of breach data from the Verizon Data Breach Report, that's one of my favorite places to get information. They say that same top 2 breaches have been in place for that entire time. Since 2003, it was phishing attacks and password hygiene were the top 2 breaches that tied to human failures that led to 80, sometimes 90% of breaches. 2003, they did a retrospective analysis of every report since 2003. They concluded the same thing as is true. Phishing attacks are still the #1 area of breach, followed by password hygiene or credential theft, things of that nature, followed by a distant unpatched systems and missing patches or missing configurations or misconfigurations. So when you talk about resilience, you still have to focus, I think, heavily on the end user, the human firewall, as your first line of resilience. Yes, you have technology and you can put SIMs and XDR and patch management and vulnerability scanning and red teaming and tabletop exercise, cyber insurance. You can build all these other peripheral items around your cyber program to help boost the resilience in all sorts of different ways. But still, the #1 way companies are breached is through human mistakes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Around the social engineering. And today, you're probably seeing this more, and maybe you have a story you could share with me around artificial intelligence adding complexity and sort of hyper realism to the social engineering attacks that are either over the phone with deepfakes. There's examples in the news that I'm aware of. I've never had to deal with one yet, where the CFO gets a phone call from the CEO and is talking to the CEO in real time, but it's not the CEO. CEO happens to go on tour and does a couple of YouTube videos or does some webinar presentations, and you get a recording of his voice and you get a sense of his style of communication. And then they deep fake it to the CFO saying, I need you to wire this money to this thing. We're going to buy this company. You need to do it now. And he's kind of a rude person, the CEO. And so I need you to do it now. And the attitude comes out in the call, but it's not the CEO. So what do you do there? Well, you have a keyword or a passphrase or a special, only shared with the C-suite of your company. All right, fine, CEO. I know, John, you want me to send this money, but we have a security code that you have to, that only you know and I know. If you don't tell me what it is, I can't trust that this is you. Could be a deep fake. I don't think so, because you sound pretty real to me. What's our code word? and you go, and then all of a sudden the line goes dead because they don't know the code word, right?
Right.
Like these are the last ditch before that deep fake occurs. And companies are being deep faked now all the time because there's such a proliferation of social media and videos and things like that. So that's going to be key. And that's also good for people whose grandma gets a call from grandson Jimmy, Grandma, I've been abducted and they're going to hurt me and you got to pay $10,000. Grandma has to say, well, Jimmy, what's the family safe word? Right. If you don't know it, it doesn't happen. It's terrible that we live in a world where we have to do this, but if you know what you're doing, you can hopefully avoid these things. And that's a long way of.
And I think the challenge, I'm going to go into the AI conversation and I'll go back to resilience, but I think the challenge right now is going back to our original conversation. You have to be so aware, right, of what's going on, because you're talking about like you and I've heard challenges like this. We can pick up the phone, and a lot of times I tell clients, don't answer the phone unless you know the number. And even if you know the number, right, don't say much at the start. Just kind of go through the conversation like, hello, because they can record your voice. And now with AI technology, and we see like on TikTok and all that, the gorilla videos and all that, they can take and put it through a digital interface, create your voice, start typing out the text, and now that it's you. Because they've got a sound bite of you, and now it sounds exactly you because they've got that sound bite, right? Yep. So you're talking about like deep fakes, and they can do that. And then if they get a video and a picture, they can grab that and extract that same thing. Now they have your voice, your video, your likeness, and then they can go through that. The guy was hearing about calls where threat actors were coming into incidents in the actual Zoom or Teams meeting. And they sounded like the individuals in the organization. And then we would notice like they're coming from a phone number. Hold on, no one's calling in from a phone number. Cancel this line, cancel the conversation. One thing that you and I know, someone was not out of band email. Threat actor got that email, got it, and started connecting and was able to get it. So then we had to get out of bound communication going. Yep. So all that to say is, in this day and age of, AI technologies and the solutions, you have to be so hyper vigilant that you have to ask your question, am I supposed to be receiving this call? Am I supposed to be receiving this email? Is this valid? Because you and I know the emails now are going to be so much better on the persona of the individual, the tone of it. It's not going to say, good morning, sir. And it's going to say, hey, Craig. Where maybe you and I talk through email. That's Brandon. Brandon says, hey, Craig, hey, can you click on this link? I need you to check it out quickly. Brandon asked me to do that. Like, that's normal cadence of Brandon, how he talks to me, versus good afternoon, sir. When you have a moment to check out our invoice, you're like, yeah, this is phishing, right?
That's right. That's not how Craig talks, but yes, no, exactly. That's exactly right. And AI has gotten to a point where they can point it to your social media profile and come up with 10 really personalized spear phishing attacks to the person of interest that, reference the fact you brought your dog to the vet last week and you were angry about how much it cost. And they'll put here's your reduced vet bill. We heard you talking on social media about us. We wanted to give you a discount. Could you remove that social media post? But it's a ruse, right? And like so specific that people are almost ready to click, and you have to be vigilant. You just have to be resilient and look at all of the indicators of whether this could be a ruse or not. It's almost like you have to assume everything you get is a ruse or a social engineering attempt, and only validate the ones that are truly real.
Right. And I think going back to the resilience, one thing I've been teaching my clients, I've been doing it for several years now, is what's the impact of an incident? The resilience will show if the impact is low because you've done your security team, the IT team responded quickly with the tools and the ability to mitigate that incident, your resilience is high because you're able to stop any type of massive impact in the organization. So you were talking about phishing campaigns. If they saw a phishing campaign came in, the person clicked the link, but it didn't go any further because that was stopped, the email scam or campaign or anything they were doing was stopped at the Mindcast or Barracuda, the phishing. They stopped the access. They reset the password. They did that within 15 minutes. And now the person's username and password's reset and they're back and going. That's resilient because now they can maintain 100%. Their business, right? Versus absolutely. They got in at 9:00 on Monday. It's still ongoing on Friday afternoon at 3. And now the person spammed the whole company, and now the CEO responded back with their credit card. Now, okay, your resilience is low, right? You need to improve that, right? And I think that goes back to your training and everything that you're talking about. But I think that's a good test on how your resilience is, because I was dealing with a company, and I was so proud of them. They called me after the incident. So I'm like, hey, did you need me involved? No, I'm calling you to tell you the incident's over. I'm like, okay, let me check in. When did it start?
Are you sure it's over? Because sometimes it's not. You think it is. There's land and expand issues, but yeah.
100%. But they went through the incident response plan. They had the CERT team. They had the outside vendor partner SIM. They went through the whole thing. They were in the incident and finished the incident within an hour.
Wow, that's start to finish right there. There you go.
Start to finish. And they were so proud of it. They called me to tell me what they did, and they figured it out. They figured the gap. They figured how they got in. They closed that. They mitigated right away. And I'm like, that's awesome. What's lessons learned? We're going to keep going through our reporting. We're keep doing the vulnerability, our pen testing, go through our scanning to make sure we've got our patch management, and keep plugging the holes. But we're going to just keep testing, and with tabletop exercise, a lot of things that we recommend. Right. They're going to do it over and over again to make sure it's front of mind.
Muscle memory, right? So that you're not figuring it out in an emergency. That's great. And you know what? One of the hardest parts that I've ever been tasked with doing in my programs that I develop is, what is the financial benefit of building a cybersecurity program? Because you're basically charging clients for the technology stack, for the education, for the time away from productive work, building widgets or doing whatever the company does to do the awareness training and all these other things. There's a cost to all of that. And then you're playing that off of, well, what would the cost of an incident be? To your point, if an incident is 1 hour and everything's back up and running, the cost has been shrunk from what could be $100,000 down to $5,000 or $2,000, whatever the cost is, right? That's a financial metric that you can somehow come up with to share with your clients, that then justifies spending $10,000 over here for the awareness training platform and the tabletops and the vCISO and all that. Like, it's a give and take. It's really hard to prove a negative in these scenarios on what the cost of an incident could be, because, well, if it wasn't 1 hour and it was a day, what would that cost you? If it was a week, what would that cost you? And people aren't very good at calculating those costs. It can be challenging, right?
It can, but I think, like you said, is you look at the outage impact. If that server's down, what's the financial impact? Kind of looking at, a lot of times they have to work with their CFO. Now, I want to put a caveat there where you said, when you look at the cost of the security budget versus the actual incident, I know there's CEOs and CFOs that potential listen. That doesn't mean to reduce your cybersecurity program. Right. And I've seen that and had that conversation. Well, we don't have any incidents, so can I get rid of endpoint protection? Can I get rid of two-factor authentication? Because it's not happening to me. It's like, hold on, timeout. Those are the mitigating factors, and the controls are helping to protect. But we haven't had an incident. Someone got a phishing campaign, they stopped it, right? And we're good, right? So be mindful to balance that out, because I've had those conversations where they start trying to pull controls.
Yeah, the same thing happens to good MSPs, right? If you're a managed service provider and you're doing a great job of keeping the infrastructure of a company up and running, people view the value of your services lower and lower and lower over time, because everything's just working. Like, how hard is it? How hard can it be? I never have a problem here. What am I paying my MSP all this money for? Well, they're the ones that are keeping things tip-top shape. They're replacing machines in a phased approach so that you don't have 50 Windows 10 machines to replace at the end of this year. You only have 10 because you've done 40 throughout the year or last year up to Windows 11 or whatever the case may be. And the only thing I can offer you is that some of the other ways you can add and show value is through that awareness and those phishing simulations that can also touch every last person, teaching them maybe some threats they didn't know about, such as the unsubscribe link or the phishing attacks or the overpayment. You buy something online or you sell something on Marketplace and someone sends you $500 extra by accident. Instead of paying you $50, they pay you $500. They say, oh, I added a zero. Send me $450 back, please. That's a payment scam. If you send $450 back, you're never going to see it again, and you're not going to get anything out of this. Like, those kinds of value-added educational institution trainings that you can give to your clients as an MSP, keep that value proposition high between your MSP and the customer, so that they don't devalue the IT work you're doing. They say, oh yeah, they're keeping us aware, they're keeping our systems running, and you need to have those conversations, make sure they're aware of all the things that you've done to keep them operational.
And I think the other thing too is have a constant ongoing conversation with them, because there might be things you can automate, new tools and technology that might be more efficient, but always have that conversation to understand your technical stack. Don't be on the side and then blindly trust that they're doing their good job, because then what happens, it does leave concern. Have those meetings, get them to educate you. What does that mean? We're on-prem, we're in the cloud, we have a hybrid solution. Talk to me, like, what does that mean? How does that work for my business? What's our backup strategy? What's this mean? If we're out, like, have those conversations, because then what happens is when they say, okay, we want to do a review, there might be some cost savings, right? Because they're going to look, hey, we can automate this. We can maybe have some integration. We can use some tools now that we were using more manual processes. Now it's going to be more efficient. So there's a lot of things that the MSP or MSSP can come in and give you more value.
Yep. Well said. Well said, Brandon.
Now, last question. Vector, I don't see mentioned much, is companies phishing their org charts online. Are you addressing this in your risk management, cyber resilience?
Phishing their org charts. So I think that's getting at the idea of impersonation attempts, right? Sending emails to individuals. We do see a call for this. In fact, we're looking to put that into our platform. It doesn't exist today in our platform, but we are talking about it. There are some obvious things that most companies do to identify those scenarios out of, this banner message at the top of your email says, hey, the CEO just emailed you, but it came from outside your organization, from a Gmail account. So
now, just to add on, Craig, they're talking about based on the risk management. Like, are you doing that to quantify your risk management?
So maybe I'm not understanding the question.
So they're asking, do you fish your org chart part of your risk management assessment to identify the risk of the organization? So, for example, if I was going to come in your organization, I might do a phishing campaign and say, hey, your C-suite and executives are at high risk here, right? Because they've clicked on this link, they've done that. The likelihood of their access and control and what they have, the risk of them now having email is higher than your administrative staff, because they're now clicking on links that they shouldn't have. And it's kind of funny. I'll change, go into a little story. I was doing dark web scanning for a company, and I had a client fight with me. No. Our executives are fine. We're concerned about our employees, right? Our employees are the concerner. We're worried about that. And I'm like, okay, well, just put context there. It's going to scan everyone, right? We're going to look at the dark web. It's going to give backgrounds on everyone that the domain and email addresses, all that. We came back with a report. You know where I'm going with this. The executives are on the report.
Yeah. Oh,
right?
Yeah, they are. Absolutely. And what you also have to share is that this report is just publicly accessible information that Have I Been Pwned or DHash has collected from their sources, right? What's not shared is what's on the dark web, right? The legitimate hacker websites where they're trading in accounts that are still highly valuable and can be sold for dollars on the account. You're not seeing what's below the waterline. So there's 10 times, 100 times more exposed accounts in the dark web and in hacker forums than what we know about from Have I Been Pwned and DHash and these other things. You're absolutely right. And back to your point about leaders, we already know, like, what caught me off guard about that question is I already know that the executives of the companies I go to support have so little time that they basically rarely do their awareness training because they're not in their email, they're in Slack dealing with fire drills, and they're often not completing these things. So that puts them at a heightened risk. And when they do have to go in, they're highly targeted because they're publicly known. So hackers will know that the CEO and the CFO and the CTO and the COO, what their names are and what their positions are and what they're doing, and see some of their social media stuff. So they're very likely to be spearphished. So they are really one of the biggest risks of any company out there. And that's why you really have to double down on getting 100% compliance across the entire user base in your assignments, in your awareness training, in your videos, your phishing simulations, all of that stuff. The other thing that I would say we haven't talked about, and this is a simple thing that a lot of MSPs do, but don't always do, is just take those administrative rights away from those people, especially your C-suite, because they're the ones likely to click on something they shouldn't. And if they don't have the permissions, they're more likely to say, hey, IT, come and install this new printer driver. I just got notification I needed to install it. Oh, but we didn't push that out. Well, I got it. It's a printer. It's a Canon printer. I have a Canon printer. Come and install it. Come in and look. Oh, well, this is actually malware, sir, and you didn't run it because you don't have administrative rights. So I'm glad that we got it taken care of this way. You know, that kind of stuff.
100%. Now we're up at 2:00, come up to the hour. Any final thoughts?
I get asked sometimes, if you could only do one or maybe two things, Craig, what would you tell me to do? Like from a side, I'm the 10,000 hour expert in cybersecurity. I'm not a doctor, a lawyer, or anything else. So somebody might want to know, what's my shortcut at CyberHoot to keep myself secure? I say probably the number one thing is to learn and adopt a password manager. Even I made a mistake years and years ago, clicking on a LinkedIn recommendation someone wrote. Came back from vacation, somebody sent me an email, here's your recommendation from LinkedIn, and I clicked on the link in the email because I recognized the name. I hadn't spoken to them for a while, and I thought, what a nice thing of them to do, and it was a million things going on, and it was not linkedin.com. It was linkedin.it,
Right.
which of course is in Italy, right? Two-letter country code for Italy. So my password manager sat there. It took me about 1 second to figure out what I had done wrong. But my password manager in that second didn't do anything. And I'm like, am I logged in? Yeah, I'm logged in. Why isn't it filling it out? Oh my God, look at the URL. So a password manager helps you not only have unique, long and strong passwords everywhere you go, suck in the pass keys and the multi-factor, and God forbid there's challenge questions around like, what was your mother's maiden name that some websites still use? You shouldn't have any of those in there. Make up the answer, by the way. If someone says, what's your mother's maiden name? Say spaghetti, say something, put it in your password manager so you don't have a real answer for anyone to look up. But then the password manager also knows what domain you're going to, even if you make a mistake, and it'll say, I don't know where you are. What do you want me to put in here? I don't even know what this website looks like. You happen to know it looks like a spitting image of LinkedIn, but it doesn't exist. So that would be my number one thing. Number two would be to know phishing inside and out. Do your hoot fishes or do your phishing training so you absolutely, without a doubt, and practice it, muscle memory, so that when you're really tempted to click on the Taylor Swift ticket opportunity for your daughter or your niece, that you look at the domain name and it's like Taylor Swift, not
Right.
Swift. Oh, that's not, oh, I can't click on that. That's wrong. So delete. You know, like you need that muscle memory and that practice, because that's the number one way we're all being breached, and it's evidenced in the news every day.
That's awesome. So if anyone wants to check out the website, cyberhoot.com, you heard one of the community members, they're actually using it with their MSP. So great solution. If you guys want to connect with Craig, go to his LinkedIn. Here's his LinkedIn URL. Reach out to him. I'm sure he'll be able to answer any questions that you guys might have. Craig, thank you so much. This is a great conversation.
May I add one last parting thing? We give CyberHoot away for free to individuals. So if you want to get up to speed, or if you even want to just try us yourselves before you recommend us to your IT team or whatever, go to cyberhoot.com/individuals with an S, and you can get everything we deliver to a company for free for life, and it's completely free. There's no obligation. We might send you an email once in a blue moon that says, hey, if you liked us, recommend us, that kind of thing. The other thing we'll do is anybody that signs up their business will get 20% off if they get DailyCyber as the referral code. So that you heard about us here. When you go to register your company, we ask, where did you hear about us? Just say DailyCyber. You get 20% off for a year, for
Awesome.
1 year off of that. So
Well,
thank you.
Thank you so much, Craig. It was great having a conversation with you.
My pleasure.
So awesome Daily Cyber. We learned a lot. I covered a lot of great information with Craig. I think, my takeaway from this is just making sure that you're doing your due diligence with phishing campaigns and understanding it. And then again, I agree with Craig, having that gamification, having that positive feedback, to start out, and then being able to test the analytics, see where you need to adjust it for ones that may be of concern, right? And start doing that and managing, because phishing campaigns and attacks like that are still on the rise. There's still a point where, clients and organizations are getting compromised, and we're seeing it day in and day out, right? I just came from an incident this week where someone potentially might have got phished, right? So I think, as cybersecurity experts, as IT experts, people going in the field, it's something that you need to focus on. Now, we talked about cyber resilience. We talked about AI technology. Keep your ear to the ground. Make sure you're protecting yourself. So a lot we're covering. Please follow DailyCyber. Make sure that you guys are keeping up to date with everything that's going on. So don't forget, software is hackable. Being connected is vulnerable. I'll see you next DailyCyber.